Hi and welcome to this tutorial about KST, a very fast, user-friendly, open-source cross-platform plotting tool. This tutorial introduces some of KST's unique productivity features, in particular, but not limited to, the edit multiple mode and the change data file tool. So to start, let's use the data wizard to load some data from a file. Load the 5 vectors, plot them along with the spectra plots, put them in separate tabs. So there I got my data loaded with the first of the very productive tool, which is the data wizard, which you can, by the way, call up as many times as you want within the same session. The next thing I want to show is how to use the edit multiple mode, in this case to change the setting of an axis on a given number of plots very quickly. So if I double click on the x-axis here, it will open the edit plot item dialog with x-axis pre-selected here. Notice this button on the right, edit multiple. If I click on it, brings me up a list of all objects of the same type. So for instance, if I want to select the logarithmic axis for all PSD plots, I could highlight them here and then move to this section. As you notice, the appearance of the controls is a bit strange. This is because in the edit multiple mode they become tree state. Basic state being don't change anything, leave as is. If you click once, it will force the property, and if you click another time, it will force it to false. So in this case, I will do like this, and when I hit OK, I have to do a quick auto scale, and I get my plots with log scale in x-axis. I could also, another example, select the PSD plots, remove grid lines in x and y axis. Notice that I can change multiple properties at once. When I hit OK, the grid lines are gone. So this was the edit multiple mode applied to plot objects. As you may have noticed, when I initially loaded the data, I created 2 tabs or views, which I can rename, which will have an input on the name of the output files according to the format in which I print. We'll call this one time series, and I can also reorder the tabs. I can of course also close one or create a new one if I want here from the menu. So that was the management of tabs or views. One tool which I'd also like to show a bit more is the data manager. The data manager is a list of all the objects you currently have in your session. You can filter here, for instance, all type 1 sensor objects. You will have data vectors, power spectra, and curves. One thing you can also do from the data manager is call up the context menus, which will be depending on different depending on the type of object you called them from. So if you call them from power spectrum, you will have edit option to change the settings, which will be taken into account instantaneously. Or you could call them from a vector. You will have edit to change the properties of the vector, or the basic possibility is to make a curve, power spectrum, or histogram. I will take the chance to show the histogram tool. So you can select a vector here, the min and max of the bins, the number of bins. To make it easier, you could select auto bin, which will create 60 bins in this case based on the values in the vectors. You could even do it real time if you're using live data. Here you can select the way the data is represented, the appearance, and where to place it. So if I hit OK here, I get my histogram computed live from the data. One other tool I forgot to show is the purge here button. Purge button allows removing from memory all the unused objects, so all the objects which are not required here. If I hit purge, they disappear. Now the next tool I wanted to demonstrate is the change data file tool, which can be called from this icon or from the menu here. Change data file allows selecting from a given data source for one by one or many vectors. So I will in this case select all vectors from sensor1.dat. I will indicate here the new data source. It's a second set of measurements, and I can change the selected vectors and matrices, which means all the all the objects here will be reloaded from the new file. So if I hit OK here, I get the same curves and histogram, but this time if you look at the data manager, you will see that the origin is a different file. Even better, if I have my object selected here, come back to sensor 1 and select duplicate selected vectors and matrices and derived objects. In this case, if I hit OK, KST will load a second set of vectors and plot a second set of curves, etc. based on the other file. If you look here, you see the vectors from sensor 2 and the vectors from sensor1.dat. And all objects are duplicated automatically, which makes it very easy to do comparisons. One other tool I'd like to show at this stage is the assign curve color per file. This is very practical here, very handy if you have two files like in this example and you want to be able to associate clearly which is coming from which file. So I could select here different color for sensor 2 and sensor 1, hit OK, and all curves coming from one file get one color, the other ones get the other color. In this case the data are very similar, so it's a bit hard to see the difference, but if you zoom in you will noticeably see different curves. One thing I can now do to show the edit multiple mode applied to curves is here go to edit curve, select for instance all curves coming from the second set of data and make a dotted line. So there you see that the second set of curves get a dotted line. The last thing I'd like to show in this session is the maximize plot option, which you can call it from the context menu or by hitting Z on the keyboard. It will simply zoom into the plot so that you can see more details, and when you're done with it you can hit Z again and it will be back to the previous state. So hope you enjoyed the session. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for more tutorials.